Hi, I'm Matt Pike, and in this video, I'll guide you through the oscillators and filter of the MiniFreq, Arturia's unconventional hybrid synthesizer. We're going to explore the wide range of timbres, textures, and features available to you, and how they've been expanded to go beyond what was already possible with other Arturia synthesizers. MiniFreq features two digital multi-engine oscillators, which are evolved from those found in the hugely popular MicroFreq. These feature 14 core engines, which are available on both oscillators, and 8 special engines that can be selected only on either oscillator 1 or oscillator 2. We control the oscillators with this switch and these 6 knobs along the top left of the synth. Using the select switch, we can choose whether we want to control oscillator 1 or oscillator 2. The 6 knobs will affect the chosen oscillator. The first knob is tune. By default, this controls in semitone increments. Or if shift is held, it will be octaves. If you want to adjust the fine tune, you can click the encoder. And a handy shortcut is if you want to reset the tuning to 0, you can just press and hold the encoder. The next knob is type. This selects the engine mode for the currently selected oscillator. Scrolling through familiar classic synthesis techniques to wilder, more experimental engines. The next 3 knobs, wave, timbre, and shape, behave differently depending on the engine which is selected. It's helpful to keep an eye on the screen while learning what these controls do in the different engine modes, as it will display a helpful parameter name while you wiggle the knob. The active engine type is also displayed at the top of the screen if you're ever in doubt. The final knob in the oscillator section is the volume knob, which controls the output of the currently selected oscillator. Don't forget, these volume knobs can be modulated via the mod matrix, which is a great way to play the 2 oscillators against each other and create complex layered sounds. Here's a fairly simple example using 2 LFOs as mod sources. Now we've covered how to control these oscillators, let's dig in and see what these engine modes can do. We'll start with the modes that are available on both oscillators first. The first engine mode is basic waves. This provides the building blocks for many classic subtractive synthesis sounds from classic analog and digital synths. The wave knob controls morph, which crossfades from a square wave to a saw wave and then up to a dual saw at 100%. The timbre knob controls pulse width of the square when wave is set under 50%, and the phase of the second of the dual saws when it's set over 50%. So this can be assigned to an LFO for some classic pulse width modulation. The shape control adds a simple sine wave sub-oscillator, an octave below the main waves, which is great for fattening up the sound. The second engine mode is super wave. This engine gives you those huge, thick super saws we often associate with classic rave sounds by detuning multiple versions of a wave against each other. It takes the concept further, however, as the wave knob chooses whether you want to use saw, square, triangle, or sine waves, rather than just the traditional saw. Timbre controls the detune amount, and shape controls the level of the detuned waves. Here are two examples from some of my factory patches of how varied the results from this engine can be. one using square waves and the other using saws. The next engine is the harmonic oscillator. This creates new sounds by combining sine waves at different harmonic pitches to form more complex waveforms. Wave controls the level of the 8 harmonic oscillators. Then timbre changes the waveform of those oscillators, leading to a huge scope of potential results. Shape applies a chorus to these oscillators to soften them and create width, great for softer, dreamier sounds. Coupler Strong is the first engine where we move away from a typical oscillator. It's a synthesis technique used in a lot of physical modeling synthesis and is often used to create string-like textures. It is created by using noise or a waveform to excite a delay so short that it's tuned to a musical note. The wave knob controls bow, which is essentially how loud the sound exciting the delay is after its initial impact. So when wave is set to 0, we can create naturally decaying plucks, or we can turn it up for sustained sounds. Timbre controls position, which changes the brightness of the initial transient. Shape controls the amount of decay or feedback of the delay network. It's worth noting, if you want to hear the full natural decay of these sounds, you might want to set the release of the ADSR to full. Virtual Analog simulates a classic 2-oscillator setup from analog synthesizers in just 3 knobs. Wave controls the tuning offset of the second oscillator in a range of ±2 octaves, but in a way that is still easy to find those useful musical relationships. Timbre controls the first oscillator, which is always square wave based. For the first half of the control, it's a pulse width control, then it becomes a synced pitch shift for the second half. Shape is a wave shape control for the second oscillator, blending between triangle, saw, and pulse waves. The Waveshaper engine allows for drastic changes in timbre by combining a Waveshaper and a wavefolder. Wave controls the base waveform via the Waveshaper, from a square-like wave through triangle, sine, and then multiplying up an octave. Timbre controls the wavefolder amount. Shape controls the asymmetry of the wave, which depending on the other 2 controls can result in what sounds like pulse width modulation or turn a triangle into a saw wave. These controls are so interdependent and can lead to a really wide range of timbres depending on each other's positions, so definitely explore it if you're after drastic shifts in timbre. The 2-op FM engine offers a really accessible way to create some classic FM sounds. Wave sets the ratio of the 2 operators. Timbre controls the amount of FM modulation. This is a control that really requires modulation to get the best out of it. For instance, in a classic example of FM synthesis, you'd often modulate this with an envelope, like we've got going on here. Finally, shape controls the feedback of the FM circuit. It's a bidirectional control, so at 50%, there's no feedback. Above that point, it adds a stable feedback, allowing you to create strong saw-like waves. Below 50%, it creates chaotic feedback if you want to get weird. The Formant engine gives us the option to make abstract vocal tones and other strange filtered sounds via two windowed formants. Wave sets the interval between the two formants. However, to hear this clearly, we need to set the formant frequency with timbre. Shape then controls the window size and shape of the formants. This essentially controls how soft or buzzy the timbre is. This synthesis technique is particularly fun with some distortion added, as it can lead to very drastic timbral shifts. Here I've added the sub-oscillator on oscillator 2 as well. The speech engine uses a collection of speech algorithms to generate vowel sounds or whole words. Wave initially crossfades between different vowel synthesis algorithms before moving into different banks of words in the second half of its travel.
Juliet J, Yalla J, Juliet, frequency.
Timbre controls formant shift, which also slows the rate at which words are said.
Frequency. Frequency.
And shape scans through the vowels or words in a bank. The modal engine is a physical modeling algorithm that simulates the sound of physical objects being excited by a short burst of noise. Wave changes the material being resonated. Timbre controls the brightness. And shape controls the decay time. You'll want to open up the envelope release to hear the natural decay. This is a personal favorite engine of mine, as it can provide that extra dimension when layered with other engines such as the 2-op FM. The noise engine may surprise you in what it's capable of. It offers particle, white, or metallic noise via the wave knob. And then timbre controls the inherent pitch or timbre of these noise algorithms. Shape is where we can get an added layer of interest, as you can then blend in either a sine, triangle, or square wave to the noise signal. This allows us to provide tonal and atonal elements of a sound from a single oscillator, allowing for delicate, noisy textures like those in this patch. The bass engine is the first of 3 provided by Noise Engineering and is great for tough, gritty sounds. It's based on a complex modulation network fed by a sine and cosine wave, which we can then influence via saturation on the wave knob, a wave folder on the timbre knob, and noise modulation on the shape knob to get a bit of chaos and texture. As with any complex synthesis, all these controls are very interdependent and there are lots of possibilities in here. The SAW-X engine manipulates SAW waves to generate new textures. Wave increases the gain of the modulus stage, which sounds similar to hard sync tuning. Timbre then choruses the individual SAW waves, and shape applies noise modulation to the wave. The Harm engine is another twist on additive synthesis as found in the harmonic engine. Here the results are more aggressive and abstract as you'd expect from noise engineering. Wave controls the spread of the partials, these are not locked to harmonics, which allows for metallic, harsh results, especially when combined with timbre, which rectifies the partials. Shape again adds noise modulation to destabilize things. So those are all the core engines available on both oscillators. The engines we're now going to cover are available only on either oscillator 1 or oscillator 2 exclusively. The first of these, which is only available on oscillator 1, is the audio in engine. It takes whatever signal is being sent to the mono audio in jack on the back of the synth and passes it through the rest of the synth and its effects. We are then given a few tools to manipulate this audio in the engine. Wave controls a wave folder. Timbre controls decimation. And shape adds aggressive noise modulation. We can then process and modulate this sound through the rest of the engine to achieve drastically varying results. Or like this. All of the remaining modes are available for oscillator 2 only. The first of these is the chords oscillator. With this, we can choose chords with wave, timbre inverts and transposes the chord, and shape controls the waveform. From this point on, all the remaining engine modes take audio from oscillator 1 and route it into oscillator 2. For instance, FM and ring mod is an oscillator which uses the output of oscillator 1 as a modulation source. Wave sets the waveform of the carrier oscillator, so oscillator 2 in this case. Then timbre controls FM. And shape controls ring mod. Being able to combine and modulate these, as well as using any of the various complex engines on oscillator 1, opens up a huge amount of possibilities from this engine. The next few engines are filters. The first of these is the multi-filter, for which wave controls frequency. Timbre controls resonance. And shape chooses the filter mode. We then have the surgeon filter, which are steep filters with no resonance. So in this case, the controls are the same as before, but with timbre having no effect on low pass and high pass. However, in bandpass, it controls the spread of the filter, so you can use this to focus a sound into a specific frequency band without adding resonance. The comb filter has the added bonus of it following the pitch of the keyboard, so this allows us to use it for physical modeling style patches. Wave controls frequency, timbre controls gain or feedback, and shape controls dampening for a more realistic, darker decay. And the preset harp is a great example of using a noise engine in oscillator 1 to generate an exciter to use the comb filter for Karplus strong synthesis. The phaser filter behaves similarly to the multi-filter, with wave controlling frequency, timbre controlling feedback, and shape controlling the number of poles. The final engine is destroy, which includes a wave folder on wave, decimation on timbre, and bit crushing on shape. What helps make all these filters and effects so useful is that when they're active, the volume on oscillator 2 becomes a dry-wet blend between the effects and the output of oscillator 1. So you can, for instance, get very dramatic with destroy, then blend it into the original waveform. Now we've covered all the oscillators and their different modes, let's take a look at the analog filter. The analog filter in the Mini-Freak is the same smooth-sounding analog state variable filter from the Micro-Freak, only now we have 6 fully polyphonic voices worth. We have 3 filter modes available: low pass, bandpass, and high pass. And a bipolar control to apply the main VCA envelope. If you hold Shift, you can also use this knob to set the amount that velocity affects the envelope to filter routing for more dynamic playing. The filter can be made to self-oscillate and tracks the keyboard when set to a mod amount of 50 in the mod matrix, as it is in this preset Geiger. You will want to make sure your unit is calibrated in the utility menu. That pretty much covers it for the oscillators and filters in the Mini-Freak. Hopefully this video is giving you a taste of the sonic building blocks in the Mini-Freak. However, the real magic starts to happen when you combine them, modulate them, and perform with them. So make sure to head over to Arturia's YouTube channel to find out other deep dive tutorials on these sections of the Mini-Freak, to find out how to unleash the power of this weird and wonderful little beast. And if you enjoyed what you've just heard and seen, please make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon.